Hi, everybody. We'll be starting at 6:05. There's some stuff to grab from the module, so please go and make sure you download that before class starts and open up the dice roller in another tab so you have that ready to go. Hey, everybody, as you're showing up, I'm pretty sure the instructions are obvious because they're sitting right there on the screen, but please make sure to go to do that. Get those, download those files and open that Google Dice Roller in another tab before you start class. And we'll start in 3 minutes. Hey everybody, welcome to class. Yeah. I think most of you guys are people who were here on Tuesday. That's good news. Yeah, hi everybody. Welcome to class. I'm going to jump us right into a warm up. So here is today's warm up. We're in this first section where we're talking about getting jobs and stuff. The unit really is about impromptu speeches, which I mentioned on Tuesday is a really advanced type of speech. But it's a good way to get you loose and warmed up in a class like this. So we're going to do some impromptu speech practice in small groups. So here is the prompt for this one. Time traveler. For this one, I am going to ask you to think about if you could go backward or forward in time to any point, when would you go to? And would you see anyone specific or anything specific and why? So go ahead and think about that. And oop, don't go to that yet. Think about that. And I'm going to put you guys into small groups to talk about it. So because this is like, we're going to talk about impromptu speeches today, this might not feel like a speech, but it is. When you're just explain the answer to that question, you are giving a speech to your small group. So don't do it anything different than you would if you were just telling a story to friends. Just give it a shot. And before you guys start this, I want you to take a moment to say hello to each other, waste a little bit of time getting to know each other because here in the first few weeks, especially, it's important for you guys to get to know each other somewhat. And this is the only way to do it. So there we go. We got groups of three or four. Take some time at the beginning to waste to say, hi, who are you? What are you doing here? How's your week? Whatever. And then get into this question, which I will put into the chat once you guys are all into your small groups. Let's do this for, I want you guys to really talk to each other for six until 6:15. So that is 8 minutes. You guys will be talking like this. Here are your rooms. Welcome back, everybody. Like everybody is back almost. So got there we go. Excellent. Hey, welcome back, everybody. So, how'd that go? Did anybody cry? Did anything fall apart for anybody? Anybody? Right, that was fun. Hopefully that was fun. That was your first impromptu speech, really. Like just and that's as difficult as they really need to be. You've been giving impromptu speeches your whole life. Anytime you talk about something that you have any idea about, even slightly beforehand, even if you like think about it just for a minute and then you're like, hey, I want to talk about this movie I just saw. That's an impromptu speech. So you're already good at this. You've been doing it forever. So now we've warmed up a little bit. Let's jump into some heavy speech theory. Yay! So I want to start class today with a little bit of lecturing. I don't do this often. I try not to do this very often. And when I do, I try to balance it with you guys hearing somebody else's voice other than mine. So we're going to start with a little lecture. One of the things that there's several things that I need to make sure that you guys know about speech, about communications for this class. There's like takeaways that this class is like required to teach you, and one of them we're going to go over tonight. So let's jump right into it. Communication is weird. So if you have, how many of you guys have taken a communications class of some kind already? A couple of you. Good, good. So those of you who've taken something, and even maybe there's some of you who haven't, you might have studied communications in some little detail. As soon as you start to realize that we do this all the time, and we generally take it for granted how incredibly complicated it is that what we're doing when we're communicating with each other. We are weird little like brains separated from the universe by this meat package, and we're interpreting signals and manufacturing a universe in our minds because that's all we are. And it's not the same as those around us. And we somehow are supposed to have those creatures are going to get along and have conversations and somehow have conversations about the same thing and even agree sometimes. It's crazy. So let's talk about that. How communication works that we're going to cover today. And but let's start in the very, very beginning. The levels of communication. So this class is called interpersonal communication. I want to show you guys where that fits as far as communication at all. Doo-doo. So here are the levels of communication. We start with, I'm showing it to you guys on the screen. So the first level is impersonal. So I start there. This kind of goes in a circle that we're going to see. So you could kind of start anywhere, kind of. But let's start with impersonal communication. Impersonal communication would be communication that's one way, right? Like say an email. That's an impersonal communication. There's no chance for feedback. There's not really a conversation happening, and the person who is sending the communication might not even know the person receiving it. An email is kind of it's not a bad example, but it's an example where people do generally know each other. But there are many types of impersonal communication where the people won't know each other at all. Let's say, for example, a song or watching a show on TV, a movie, reading a book. Any of those are communication where the person creating the thing, the musician, the author, the actors, they don't know you're alive, but communication is happening. A lot of communication is happening. People say, if you've ever, if you, how many of you guys are readers? Anybody here readers? Like to read? Oh my God, that makes me happy to see so many hands up. I feel like it's dying. Anyway, I love to read, and I think that, I mean, I mostly these days it's audiobooks, but I still get the exact same trick. There's magic when you read, right? When you read, you can kind of have a conversation with the author a little bit. Like you get to know them, especially once you've read an entire book or entire series by somebody, you start to kind of understand who they are. Even if it's a book, you might have that happen, even if it's a book like just a fantasy. Like you might read J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and at the end have a pretty good idea of who he was. You won't know the details about him, but you'll know a lot about him. And that's interesting. I find that wildly interesting, right? So there's impersonal communication. That's the first level. That's where one side like basically like launches the communication like a missile. And the other side's like, yeah, yeah, song. And they don't necessarily know each other. This can also create what's called pseudo relationships, which most Americans enjoy quite a few of. And that's where you feel like you're close to a musician because you've listened to their music, but they don't know you're alive. And that is super weird. That is super, super weird. But the problem is with that, I'm gonna stop screen shoot. I lose my cursor all the time. The problem with that is good music, if it's going to be written well, same as good writing, good any communication, for it to work, it has to be from the heart. I don't know if you guys ever thought about that, but good music comes from the heart. That's when if you listen to musicians, like I just watched an interview with Doechii recently where she talked about that's literally how that's the magic. That's why she's so famous right now, is she just opens up her heart. C.S. Lewis, famous Christian author, he has a quote where he says, being an author is easy. You just sit down at your typewriter and bleed. And I like that mental picture because if you're going to do any of these type of communications well, you really have to be present. But when you are present, people get to know you. Weirdly, they get to know you, even though you aren't in the same room, might even be the same country. They're going to get to know you, and I find that magic. There's a lot of magic in communication. A lot of things we swim through that are weird, but that's one of them. So that's impersonal communication. We enjoy it all the time, and it creates a lot of weird connections for us. We right now, as humans, are experiencing impersonal communication in a way that humans never have before, and we don't know the ramifications of that. We have no idea what this all means, right? We've never had this before. Movies, we've never had all of the amount of books that you can consume is insane right now. People didn't have any of this, right? And so all the amount of music that I listen to throughout my day is bonkers when you think about, like, let's look at the past when you had to literally have somebody playing a song for you in order for you to hear it. Like, let's think about the record player is not that old, right? Humans aren't used to this. So we are hitting a lot of impersonal communication right now. We have a lot of weird pseudo relationships, and through those, we also though are connecting to each other in strange ways. About like we connect to each other about the same thing. Oh, you like Doechii? I like Doechii. Oh my God, did you like her? And now we're communicating and connecting about somebody else that doesn't even know we're here, but we are, and we're connecting for reals. So that's the first level, impersonal communication. Crazy. It's going to keep getting crazier. This is that kind of a lecture. So let's go back to this little chart. The next one after impersonal is intrapersonal. This is the conversation that you have in your head. So when you're talking to yourself, you might be like, "Oh, I don't do that." But if that's true, then you're very rare, extraordinarily rare. The average person, most human beings, spend honestly half of their waking hours talking to themselves. Half. So that might sound bonkers. You're like, no, I don't do that. Half? That's insane. But anytime you think, anytime you remember, anytime you plan for the future or remember the past, have any sort of memory, you're in your head, right? Anytime you read, you're not here anymore. You're in your head. Anytime we kind of do that all the time. When you start thinking about it, we're out of the current moment an incredible amount of times, the half of our waking hours, which if you do the math, that means that a third of your life you're asleep, a third of your life you're talking to yourself, and a third of your life you're actually engaging with the world around you. Do you feel like a crazy person? I kind of do. That sounds bonkers. That sounds totally crazy. There's a lot of psychology right now about being present in the moment and about working towards that. Has anybody been through counseling to try and learn to be present? I have. I went to counseling for my ADHD, and they were like, "Oh, let's ground you in the moment." And I had so many exercises to ground me in the moment that yeah, I get why we're doing that, right? There's philosophers that talk about this. Alan Watts, if you know him, he's a British philosopher who presented Buddhism with Christianity to the West. And he talks a lot about the chattering monkey that's in our mind that we need to just get over listening to. All of this is intrapersonal communication. When it's out of whack, you can spend your whole day talking to yourself. And we see people sometimes here in Seattle walking around who have problems with their intrapersonal communications spilling out into the world around them. Because humans are weirdly fragile with all this. Our communication and how we work, it can be broken really easily. And when it's not broken, it's still, honest to God, when you start backing up and explaining it, kind of looks a little bonkers, right? The fact that you talk to yourself half the day is crazy. I think it's crazy. I think it's totally crazy. I had a whole long talk with my counselor, my therapist about that, where I was like, seriously? Like, this is how it works, right? And like, shouldn't we try to not? She's like, no, that's exactly how it works. And then you throw in there like religion and who you're talking to in your mind, and woo, we're doomed. We're doomed. Right? That's you're gonna have a whole world inside your head that no one's ever gonna have access to except you. And it's gonna be very important, but just to you. So that's intrapersonal communication. Um, there should be an entire class on that. I honestly think. I think that most people don't know how to talk to themselves. Has anybody ever taught you? And nobody taught me until I was an adult and I had to take classes on it. So anyway, that's intrapersonal. That's the second level. The next is drum roll, interpersonal, where we are now. So interpersonal is communication between two or more people, but usually it's just a small couple of people, like two, maybe three. Sometimes we talk about interpersonal communication relationships where they're triads. We talk about that as well. But oftentimes it's really focusing on relationships between two people. But it could be more. It could be like a family. It could be a group of friends. And this is what this class is going to cover. So the communication that happens between people when it's not, well, when it's not the very next level, which is small group. Small group is about, this is super strange. This number feels biblical to me, a little too biblical, but it's 12 or more people. Once you have enough to have disciples, then it's a small group. That number feels arbitrary. Why is it not 10? Why is it 12? Why is it not 14? I don't know. But that's right around it. Of most communications theory, I should actually mention this to you guys here because we're about to see some dates and stuff. Most communication theory is old. Like most of what we know and what I'm teaching you guys is based on pretty old studies. If that inspires any of you to go get your master's and doctorate in communication, it's a wide open field to make a famous name for yourself. I'd do it, but I'm lazy and I want to make video games instead. So maybe one of you guys, that'd be awesome because I'm gonna be citing stuff that's 50 years old here in just a minute. But that's part of this, the small group style being 12. People say anywhere from 10 to 20. But that's the idea. This is a class. Small group communication is also sometimes called business communication. If you take a class at school, suddenly it's business, and then it changes the whole visual. You're like, oh, it's not us sitting in a small group having a conversation about our feelings. It's business. So yeah, that's small group communication. And then the last one in the list, let me show you, is public or performative. So that is when you're on stage. That's when somebody is talking to a large group of people, more than 20, right? When more than 12, more than 20, more than the number's vague. But when one person's talking to a crowd, that's when we have public or performative communication, which, oh, wait, I was telling you guys this class is interpersonal. Oh my God, I'm sorry. This class is interpersonal. This class is public. Interpersonal is a totally different class that I teach. That is not this one. This class is this public communication. But if you ever want to take my interpersonal communications class, it's pretty awesome. And I teach you how to get along with other people. And it's all about how to deal with your parents and why your friends are shit sometimes and awesome other times and why you're crazy. But that's interpersonal. My brain was doing its thing. Public performative is what we are going to do in this class. So knowing this, these steps, boop, 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 up to the top, and that public performative is when you're really zoomed out, that should give you an idea of what I expect, right? In this class, you're going to be giving your speeches from your home to a camera. And it might feel like a small group, but it's not. We are performing. This is to the public, is what I want you to think of. But I also want you to notice this weird thing. Once you get to be public enough, like once your crowd is big enough, like this picture here in the bottom right, where she's standing there with a microphone talking to the audience, what's the difference between this and impersonal communication? What if they were in separate rooms? What's the real difference? There's not a lot if this person isn't looking at the audience for feedback. And that's the real difference. When you're in public, and the difference between public and impersonal is you're looking at the audience for feedback constantly. You're doing that throughout your entire performance. For you guys in this class, that creates a really unique challenge. So you're going to be giving your speech to a camera, but you're also going to have the class, like right now, you notice I'm not giving eye contact to the camera because I'm looking at all of you. I have all of you as a grid on my computer, on my screen. But if I only look at you guys down here while I'm talking, it feels like I'm not giving you guys eye contact, right? It feels like I'm not looking at you. even though I most definitely am. Anastasia was just looking at her camera or their camera. Are you or her? I'm sorry, Anastasia. I think you,
I use they them, but
Hey,
I think
them.
that's
Okay,
good.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with me. So yeah, when they were looking at like I just looked at they were looking at their camera, I was looking around down here, and that gave me, yeah, Lucas is giving it like that. That gives the impression of eye contact. But it's weird because we're most definitely not giving each other eye contact, right? If I'm giving you guys eye contact throughout the class, I'm just looking at a black thing that's soulless, like a shark's eye staring at me. Does it want to kill me? I'm not sure. But when I look down here at you guys, oh, look, there's the class. I can react to you. I can see, oh, some of you are smiling. Oh, that makes me feel good. I know I'm at least haven't lost all of you. Most of you are still here. No one's crying. You're all looking generally towards your computers. That is important. That's a key element of public speaking. So that's what it separates it from impersonal, right? From because it loops all the way back around. Once the audience gets big enough, then they might as well be at home. It doesn't really matter when the audience is large enough. But that would happen in this class, but it could happen in your life. But anyway, that's the scale. So that's how you see how it kind of loops all the way back around until finally you're a famous musician, and then it's impersonal again, and you're like, huh. I just wanted to connect to my fans, but now there's thousands of them, and they'll never know me. That's a common problem you hear from artists because it becomes impersonal again. So, any questions about that whole cycle? Sweet. All right, let's keep going. Unfortunately, it's not the end of the theory because the next big question I have for you guys is, so how does communication work? So now that we get that, okay, we cool. That's how it works. How does it work at all? Like, how do I have this wonderful drawing here that I'm so proud of. Here we go. Imagine we have the person on the left and they have a dog in mind, and they want person on the right to imagine the same dog, right? Or more practically, let's think about imagine you just got a dog and you're trying to explain to your friend at school, hey, I just got a dog. You want to tell them about it. How do you get a correct mental picture of that dog over to the other person? There's my nice little rainbow drawing, but how does you get that over there without it coming out like a totally different dog? Like when you say the word dog, it could literally mean 1,000 things, right? When I say, if I was to tell you guys, hey guys, I have two dogs, um, just saying that I have two dogs. How many of you guys are picturing small dogs? How many of you are picturing medium-sized dogs? How many large dogs? Yeah, it's like spread out. Did anybody picture specifically corgis?
Yes, because I've seen your dogs in the background.
Ah, nice, good cheating. So yes, but like that's tricky, right? The word dog could mean could mean so many things. Could mean anything from a Pomeranian to a Great Dane. That word is so is the word useless? Well, no, no, no. It's very important. But we have to use tons more words to explain. But how does that even work? That's what communication wants to know. Like with communication theory, how do we get an idea from my head into yours? I'm doing it right now. I'm trying really hard. This is why teaching is so complicated, right? This is why any conversation is. When you're talking to somebody, has anybody ever had a conversation where you're trying to explain something to somebody and they just couldn't get it? Yeah, like all of us, right? That's a normal human experience where you're like, I don't know how else to explain this to you. You ate the last piece of pizza and I'm pissed about it. I don't know how else to explain it to you. You should understand this. And the person's like, well, and whatever. And you're like, I'm not getting through to you. And then you're like throwing literally the kitchen sink at them. That's called kitchen sinking. That's when you've gotten so upset that everything's exploding because there is a lack of understanding. That kind of thing happens a lot. So communication theorists have studied this and been trying to figure out, okay, so then how does this work? How do we get ideas? How does the science, how does it work? So we have two theories that we're going to look at today. There are actually like four that are big, but all of them are old. And we're going to start with the simple one and then go to the popular one that I want to make sure you guys know. So the simple one is called the linear model, and I'll show you a picture of it. This was developed by Shannon and Weaver in 1948. So, like, we're talking World War II times, that kind of stuff. This is old. This is old, 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 right? But here we are. This is why this has been updated, but not by enough. So, in this model, we have a sender and they're sending a message. So we understand there's a message through a channel. That's something that they understood. Oh, messages go through channels, and those two concepts interact, right? Because if I'm using like my voice and the message, that I'm using air and I'm using your ears and we're using my mouth, that's one channel. But you could also be reading something, right? I could give you written information, like I'm doing right now, like what's on your screen. I'm talking to you and showing you an image at the same time. Those are two different messages on two different channels happening simultaneously because I'm hoping one of them gets through. Something sticks. It's like I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall. That's like a lot of communication is that way. We just are trying everything. So in this message, in this idea, people thought this made sense. They were like, yep, excellent. This is good. It's super simple, too simple. The main problem being that this is impersonal. This is only describing impersonal. This is correct if it's impersonal communication. This is correct if this is the sender sends something to the receiver and the receiver has literally no way to give feedback. But feedback changes everything, right? So we have an updated model. The updated model is the transactional model, which came about in 1970. And I'm actually going to have us watch a video where somebody's going to explain it, and then I'll explain it more. But I want you to hear, like I said, other people's voices. So let me grab that video. Think about the word, like the title of it, transactional. I think that tells you a lot about what this model, how it views communication. There's a deal happening, right? There's a transaction. This guy we're about to watch, his name is Alex Lyons. He does all the videos for a group called, oh gosh, what are they called? They're called Toastmasters International, and they're like a speech practice group club that you can join and practice giving speeches all over America. So I don't think any of my students have ever joined Toastmasters International, but you could. I should probably give extra credit for signing up for it or something crazy like that. That'd be cool. Anyway, we're going to watch a few of his videos throughout the quarter because he's got good stuff. He's really approachable, I think.
In a previous video, I talked about Shannon and Weaver's basic model of communication that involves a sender with a message that's sent along a channel to a receiver. This is a
I may have stolen his graphic.
very one-way or linear model of communication. It works pretty well for explaining information technology, but it doesn't capture the face-to-face dynamics that most of us experience and feel. So several years later, some other researchers like Paul Waltzewick and his colleagues, as well as Barlund, came up with what we now call the transactional model of communication, and that's the one we're going to unpack in this video. So let's get into the details. Hello again, friends. I'm Alex Lyon. If we haven't met yet, this channel, Communication Coach, is here to help you increase your personal impact so you can lead the people around you to higher levels of excellence. And a huge part of that is becoming a little more educated on the communication process. Probably one of the most helpful models of communication to understand face-to-face interaction is the transactional model or the transactional approach to communication. So let's dig into that. First, I want to talk about how this differs a little bit with Shannon and Weaver. In the Shannon and Weaver one-way linear model, you have a sender and a receiver. But in the transactional approach, the researchers that developed this say that we are both simultaneously senders and receivers. That means that we're always giving each other feedback, both verbal and nonverbal, and so in that way we're always sending messages. Paul Waltzewick used the phrase, you cannot not communicate, which is another way to say you're always sending and receiving messages, whether you realize it or not.
That's an important point to make sure you caught, right? We cannot not communicate. There is no way to not communicate. If I was like, oh, I'm not going to communicate to you guys, so like I go like this. This is communicating a ton. This is telling you so much, right? I'm telling you probably more than I want to. When it's like a little kid, I'm not going to talk to you, but they're radiating how they feel because that's what humans are. We radiate how we feel. It's called seepage. Whether you want to or not, you're going to show your feelings. And then because there's things like, well, we're going to talk in detail about this, but there's things like body language, but there's also things like paralinguistics, the parts of your voice that give away what you mean. So, and we are experts at interpreting paralinguistics and experts at interpreting body language. You might not think about this, but your whole life you've studied other humans and you are really good at picking up what they're thinking, especially the ones around you, especially like the ones around you all the time, brothers, sisters, parents. You're really good at picking up what they're thinking. My partner, he reads my fucking mind all the time. It's like I have learned long ago that I cannot get away with anything shady with this guy because he's gonna know. Like the moment that I have like a secret of any kind, like, oh, I've got a present that I ordered. He's like, something's weird. I'm like, oh my God, God damn it. Okay. He just knows. I can see some of you smiling because I think you guys get the same thing. So you cannot not communicate. It's impossible. That's important. That's kind of key point number one from this video. There's no way to not communicate. So that's important. Welcome to being a human. You're like screaming your feelings into the void. Everyone who's played Warhammer 40K, it's true. Here we go.
So let's say somebody is giving you the silent treatment and they're deliberately trying not to verbally communicate. You're still getting a message. It may not be easy to determine exactly what that message is, but there's still messages going back and forth. So you're always communicating. You cannot not communicate. Another aspect that this model brings into the situation is the context. So anytime you're interacting with someone, it's not isolated and pure. You're in a context. Let's say you're in a work setting, and that work setting shapes the way you send and receive messages. Another aspect of this is what we call the field of experience. I come into a situation and you come into a situation with a whole set of life experiences, values, and beliefs, and that's going to shape how we send and receive and interpret the messages that we are exchanging. So that's a really interesting aspect of this that the other linear Shannon and Weaver model does not capture. Another aspect of this is the notion that in any kind of interaction, we have both content that's being exchanged, like information, and we also have relational dynamics that are being built.
This is, in my mind, key point number two that I want to make sure that you catch. There's a lot he's saying that's really good stuff, but this one, when we're communicating, we are always communicating information, but we're also always communicating our relationship with the person, with the people who are listening. We are telling them what our current relationship status is according to us. That might be something you don't think about, but that's exactly what you're doing when you change how you're communicating, right? So, like for example, right now, this situation, the way it's set up, the way I'm talking to you, everything about this situation is reinforcing that I'm the professor and you are the students. Over and over and over again throughout this class, the way I'm talking to you, the way I'm presenting this information, the way you're listening to this information, you're also affirming that I am the professor. You're agreeing and then giving me this position. So that agreement and then that understanding is happening without us talking about it. And then that happens in your personal relationships and your personal communications all the time too. The great example is when you know somebody really well and they ask, and you ask them how they're doing, and they say fine. The word fine generally means anything but fine. But it can mean 1,000 things, and you're probably really good at telling when somebody says like fine. But you're also really good at understanding like, oh, the secret meaning of fine. But when somebody says fine to you in a certain way, they could also be saying back off. You aren't the person who could ask me this question. This isn't our relationship. And I bet you can tell the difference between that fine and the I'm having a bad day, but I don't want to tell you about it because I'm hurting too much. Fine. I bet you could interpret the difference between those expertly, all of you. And that's wild when you stop and think about it. Like that's all just tone. That's the person's tone. Maybe their face, maybe they're giving you some what are called kinesics, which are like your body language and your facial expressions. Maybe, but most of it's probably tone. And you interpret all of that to understand not only the information, but also how your relationship is going with this person, right? So when you talk to somebody, I mean, that's happened to me many times where you're talking to somebody and you're like, wait a minute, are we okay? And because you picked up on something, that's what's happening, right? The flip side of this is sometimes when you can, like, if you really like somebody, then you're telling them about a movie. Hey, I went and saw The Ballerina. Let me tell you all about it. John Wick, blah, blah, blah. But you do it in such a way where you're also trying to be charming, you're trying to be enchanting, and you're trying to connect with the person. that's also doing the same thing. That's telling the person that you like them, that you want to connect with them. Has nothing to do with the information being exchanged at all. I find that wildly interesting. We are complicated, right? Both of these are happening simultaneously always. If one's missing, it feels super weird. That's why when like you get a just straight information message from somebody who you have a tight relationship with, it can feel weird and cold to be like, I don't know how to interpret this. That's why.
And established and reinforced. So even if I'm just saying to my wife, hey, how was work today? And she says, oh, it was okay. Now there's information that's going back and forth, but there's relational work happening at the same time. And in fact, a very simple example like that, how was work today? Oh, it was okay. There's a lot going on there because you can read the other person's nonverbal and there's feedback going on. You can hear tone of voice and you can read into what's happening. And in fact, you probably know this from personal experience. If someone says, oh, it's okay today, it depends how they said it, not just the information or the content. There's that relational dynamic. So this model through and through is much more sophisticated and layered. In that earlier video on the Shannon and Weaver model, I talked about how the model is simple, but people are complicated. And in this transactional model, the researchers came along and rounded out their notion of how communication happens face-to-face and came up with a model that's much more sophisticated and layered to help make sense of that human interaction and that dynamic that we experience day to day. So question of the day, what are your thoughts on this transactional model of communication?
Good question. What are your thoughts about that? What do you guys think about that? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? You think you understand it? This is one of the big takeaways of the class, is understanding the transactional model of communication and being able to talk about it. So that's why it's part of your homework that's due Sunday. So just want to make sure that you understand it. If you do, you already got part of your homework done. So that's good news. Just want to make sure. Any questions at all about it? How it works, what it looks like, what's going on with it? Awesome. The one thing he didn't mention about the model in his video was noise, the concept of noise, which I think is something I just want to throw in here. It's a communications theory idea. It means more than just sound, but it is the same concept, right? Noise is anything that distracts from the message. So noise could be literal noise when you're trying to talk to somebody. Maybe there's like this fan that's on behind me. If it was loud, it would be literal noise. But it could also be there's like digital noise. That's what we actually literally call it that. When there's, speckles on the screen, we call that noise. But you can also have internal noise, which is usually the loudest of all. And that's, I think, should be understandable to you. But when you have this transactional model, they mentioned that you bring your field of experience and the context to the conversation. That implies also that you bring how you feel at the moment. And how you feel at the moment can either be no problem, but it could also create an incredible amount of noise for the conversation, is how we talk about that. So like say if I'm going through a divorce and you guys want to talk to me about Ninja Turtles, and I'm like, normally I would love to talk about Ninja Turtles, but I'm going through a divorce. Like I can't even focus on what you're saying. That's noise. That's internal noise. So does that all make sense? All right. All right. Awesome. Well, that is, I believe, the end of my little lecture about all this stuff, but I want to make sure that you guys get it. The next thing, so actually, well, here's my final takeaways. Let's talk about these, because this is the stuff that I want you just to think about, soak in, chew on, maybe talk to your friends and family about and say, wow, this is nuts. But here's our final, this is how I feel when I talk about this stuff, is how he looks right now. Because like here's the tricks, the facts. We cannot not communicate. So it's impossible to not communicate, right? We communicate information and relationship at the same time. So if you combine those two concepts, you cannot not communicate, and you're always telling people how you feel about them, whether you want to or not. Do you like that? I don't like that, but you are. You're always telling people exactly how you feel about them all the time, with your nonverbals, with your tone, with everything. You're telling literally every person. You might think you're clever, like my sister-in-law, and think that people aren't picking up on all those subtle clues, but nope, everybody knows exactly how you feel. That's how it works, right? And do I have that it's permanent? Nah, what I need is I should add the third fact there, but she didn't mention, but it's a key point to communication is also that all communication is permanent. There's literally no way to ever take something back. There's no way to go back. There's no way to like, if I, accidentally cuss out Toby right now because you're in the corner right here, and I go, Toby, I'm so your hoodie and effing blah blah blah. I can apologize to Toby. I can try and move on. I can try and build a new relationship with Toby, but it's naive and stupid for me to assume that I could ever have what we had before I did that. And that's true in all relationships, and that should be terrifying, right? Combine that with those that you cannot not communicate. You're always telling people how you feel, and it's permanent. Wow. So thinking about that, first meetings are really, really hard, right? Anytime you first meet somebody, it's especially hard. And then on top of that, think about what we're practicing this week, job interviews. So job interviews are a nightmare. They're just a setup for the nightmare. You cannot not communicate if that person listening to you is picking up all your nonverbals, but they don't know you very well. So they're assuming everything. Anything you say that sounds like it could be slightly negative, they're jumping to the conclusion that it is negative. Any little weird thing you do, they're gonna be like, oh, that's a weird thing they did, because they're probably weird. All of that is going on. It's permanent, right? It's you can't take it back. It's a recipe for anxiety. It's a recipe for a disaster. It's shocking that anybody gets a job. But it's also a recipe for a lot of fear. And that's the next thing I want to talk about. So I don't know. I was about to ask you, raise your hand if public speaking is, don't actually do this, but I was going to say, raise your hand if public speaking makes you nervous. Um, it, I could actually, I mean, some of it, and Ariel already did, and some of it, Toby is, go ahead. Does public speaking make you nervous? And does anybody here want to admit to that? Yeah, yeah. That makes you the average. That makes you normal, right? If public speaking freaks you out, that's a normal thing. Um, Seinfeld has a really funny joke that I wish I could prove was true, but he has a great joke that he says statistically, more people are afraid of public speaking than death. So at a funeral, most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. And I love that idea. I don't know if it's true or not. It's hilarious. Maybe. I don't know. I personally eat it up. I love being in front of people and I love getting attention. I'm an attention hog and I'm like, everybody look at me. But even then, I still get super anxious and I have for decades. I was a substitute teacher for a good 10 years, a decade before I became an actual high school teacher. And like every day it was like this, okay, I'm gonna be on stage in front of a bunch of teenagers for that don't know me, and I'm gonna have to wow them and razzle dazzle them, and I'm really good at it. But I was anxious every day. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that anxiety, those feelings that boil up when you're about to perform? What do you do with them? Well, we're gonna watch a video about it because Kelly McGonigal can explain it far better than I can, her point. But she has something that is one of the most valuable things in this class that I have to share with you. And I know that it's only day 2, so you're like, I'm sure he says this every class period. I don't. This is like, I'm sharing one of my most valuable things right here in the beginning. And that's this video. So it could save your life. And that sounds ridiculous. Yes. Yes, it does. It sounds like I'm like blowing it out of proportion. But she's going to share some science with you. She's going to share some research, and she's going to point out how the way you handle stress determines whether or not you're going to die young or old from heart disease, partially. But that's directly related to this class. So she's going to give some really good tools for how to deal with this. So this video, though, is a long one. It's like 15 minutes. So I want you guys to get comfy, but do pay attention. Don't die. Oh, Toby's dead. Can somebody go to his house and save him? But don't fall asleep. I think it's entertaining enough that you won't. But do get comfy, get something to drink, whatever you want to do, because it's a pretty long one. But yeah, here we go. I'm getting it set up. Yeah, it's 15 minutes long. And it's one of my favorite ones. So if you hate it, I'll be offended and morally hurt. Just kidding. You can hate it all you want. But I think you'll love it. Here we go. Bam.
I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone? How about a moderate amount of stress? Who's experienced a lot of stress? Yeah, me too. But that is not my confession. My confession is this: I am a health psychologist, and my mission is to help people be happier and healthier. But I fear that something I've been teaching for the last 10 years is doing more harm than good, and it has to do with stress. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. It increases the risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Basically, I've turned stress into the enemy. But I've changed my mind about stress. And today, I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that made me rethink my whole approach to stress. This study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years. And they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who died. Okay, some bad news first. People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including people who had relatively little stress. Now, the researchers estimated that over the 8 years they were tracking deaths, 182,000 Americans died prematurely, not from stress, but from the belief that stress is bad for you. That is over 20,000 deaths a year. Now, if that estimate is correct, that would make believing stress is bad for you the 15th largest cause of death in the United States last year, killing more people than skin cancer, HIV, AIDS, and homicide. You can see why this study freaked me out. Here I've been spending so much energy telling people stress is bad for your health. So this study got me wondering, can changing how you think about stress make you healthier? And here
I'm muted real quick. I just wanted to mention real quick, make sure that you guys caught that, right? Because I know it can get really comfy and you can zone out. But that's big science to pay attention to, right? That stress, your view of stress, what you believe about it, the way that links to this class directly is, so I have been a performer and I've been teaching performance for a very long time now. And I used to teach that when those butterflies come up, when you feel that anxiety kind of boiling up, maybe it's your heart racing, you take control of it. You buckle down on it. You grab it, right? And then you use it is what I would tell people. But that's the opposite of what she's teaching. And since I've learned this from her and applied it to my own performances, it's made a huge difference in my life. And so I just want to make sure that you understand the direct link to this class. So it's not, she's talking about stress and it's all stress. I'm applying it directly to the stress of performance, but it applies to any type of stress you have. But yeah, if you get stage fright, that's normal. That's a normal thing to experience. What do you do with that feeling though? It's not that you fight it. You don't fight it. It's something better.
here the science says yes. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress. Now, to explain how this works, I want you all to pretend that you are participants in a study designed to stress you out. It's called the social stress test. You come into the laboratory and you're told you have to give a 5-minute impromptu speech on your personal weaknesses to a panel of expert evaluators sitting right in front of you. And to make sure you feel the pressure, there are bright lights and a camera in your face, kind of like this. And the evaluators have been trained to give you discouraging nonverbal feedback, like this. Now that you're sufficiently demoralized, time for part 2, a math test. And unbeknownst to you, the experimenter has been trained to harass you during it. Now, we're going to all do this together. It's going to be fun. For me. Okay. I want you all to count backwards from 996 in increments of 7. You're going to do this out loud as fast as you can, starting with 996. Go. Go faster. Faster, please. You're going too slow. Stop, 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 stop. That guy made a mistake. We're going to have to start all over again. You're not very good at this, are you? Okay, so you get the idea. Now, if you were actually in this study, you'd probably be a little stressed out. Your heart might be pounding, you might be breathing faster, maybe breaking out into a sweat. And normally we interpret these physical changes as anxiety or signs that we aren't coping very well with the pressure. But what if you viewed them instead as signs that your body was energized, was preparing you to meet this challenge? Now, that is exactly what participants were told in a study conducted at Harvard University. Before they went through the social stress test, they were taught to rethink their stress response as helpful. That pounding heart is preparing you for action. If you're breathing faster, it's no problem. It's getting more oxygen to your brain. And participants who learned to view the stress response as helpful for their performance, well, they were less stressed out, less anxious, more confident. But the most fascinating finding to me was how their physical stress response changed. Now, in a typical stress response, your heart rate goes up and your blood vessels constrict like this. And this is one of the reasons that chronic stress is sometimes associated with cardiovascular disease. It's not really healthy to be in this state all the time. But in the study, when participants viewed their stress response as helpful, their blood vessels stayed relaxed like this. Their heart was still pounding, but this is a much healthier cardiovascular profile. It actually looks a lot like what happens in moments of joy and courage. Over a lifetime of stressful experiences, this one biological change could be the difference between a stress-induced heart attack at age 50 and living well into your 90s. And this is really what the new science of stress reveals, that how you think about stress matters. So my goal as a health psychologist has changed. I no longer want to get rid of your stress. I want to make you better at stress. And we just did a little intervention. If you raised your hand and said you'd had a lot of stress in the last year, we could have saved your life. Because hopefully the next time your heart is pounding from stress, you're going to remember this talk and you're going to think to yourself, this is my body helping me rise to this challenge. And when you view stress in that way, your body believes you and your stress response becomes healthier.
That's what I want you guys to do, right? In this class, I want you guys to view the stress response of giving your performance as positive. So some of you will get sweaty. Some of you might have a shake in your voice even. Some of you might get too much energy. There's a lot that our bodies do. It's way too much. It's overkill because your body's like, oh, you're about to go to war. Yeah, you're going to fight for your life. Got it. Let's flood you full of everything you need. And you're like, I'm performing on stage. Didn't need all this. But as long as you view it that way, it's far more healthy and you will live longer, but you'll also do better in your performance if you're not wasting energy fighting all that. Instead, accepting it, going, yep, leaning into it. Like, oh, this is my body getting me ready. Thanks, body. I don't know why I needed to stink like crazy in order to give this speech, but here we are. That's me in class. You should be thankful we're remote. But yeah, that's especially during summer. But that's what happens. I get sweaty when I'm anxious, and that's just, I go, yep, there it is. That's thanks, body. I wish this wasn't my stress response. I wish it was something a little more useful. But if I had to run away from a bear or the class like rose up and attacked me, like apparently my body thinks is going to happen, I'm ready. So that's what's happening, right? Your body doesn't know the difference between this being a bear coming at you and this being a speech. It just knows that you're scared. But that's okay. Just view it as helpful, and that will change the experience for you. Your body, your mind will believe you, like she said. So anyway, there's more to this video. Let's keep going.
Now, I said I have over a decade of demonizing stress to redeem myself from. So we are going to do one more intervention. I want to tell you about one of the most underappreciated aspects of the stress response. And the idea is this: stress makes you social. To understand this side of stress, we need to talk about a hormone, oxytocin. And I know oxytocin has already gotten as much hype as a hormone can get. It even has its own cute nickname, the cuddle hormone, because it's released when you hug someone. But this is a very small part of what oxytocin is involved in. Oxytocin is a neurohormone. It fine-tunes your brain's social instincts. It primes you to do things that strengthen close relationships. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your friends and family. It enhances your empathy. It even makes you more willing to help and support the people you care about. Some people have even suggested we should snort oxytocin to become more compassionate and caring. But here's what most people don't understand about oxytocin. It's a stress hormone. Your pituitary gland pumps this stuff out as part of the stress response. It's as much a part of your stress response as the adrenaline that makes your heart pound. And when oxytocin is released in the stress response, it is motivating you to seek support. Your biological stress response is nudging you to tell someone how you feel instead of bottling it up. Your stress response wants to make sure you notice when someone else in your life is struggling so that you can support each other. When life is difficult, your stress response wants you to be surrounded by people who care about you.
Now, I want you to think about that with a combination of specifically the situation of performance, of public speaking. Right? If your stress response is pumping out oxytocin, and oxytocin is pushing you to connect with people while you're publicly speaking to a group of people, well, there's a couple of things you can do with that, right? One is you can fight your stress response and lose all of the magic that comes along with it, which is a bummer. Don't do that. I want to encourage you. Instead, you will have a drive to connect with the audience. You'll have a push to connect. You'll want to connect with them. And the wild thing is the audience will be having emotional responses as well. We're going to watch a video not next week, the week after, when we talk about storytelling. We're going to talk about the chemicals that get released in our minds as when we hear stories, right? There's a lot of chemical reactions happening when somebody's giving a performance, especially live, like a public speaking situation. So if your oxytocin is pushing you to connect with the audience, you can use that because you want to, right? So you can use that to guide yourself to getting feedback. So that's when you're scared of looking at people in the eye, you'll feel more confident doing so as long as you lean into this response. In this class, that would be looking at the grid of people and getting some feedback from them. But in public, in person, it would be giving things like eye contact. It's depending on the group and the size, you might even touch the person if it's close to you, but if it's public speaking, you'd probably make sure they'll be watching everything that they're doing, watching with their face, watching, are they laughing? Are they listening? Is what's happening there? All of that nudging that you have is part of your oxytocin response to the fear and stress that's happening to you. You are bonding with your audience. It's kind of a weird magic thing. It will happen in this classroom too. You're going to bond with each other because you're going to go through stressful experiences over and over again. So you're going to end up bonding with the people in the class, or at least you're going to want to. It's going to be up to you whether or not you do it, but you're going to want to. And that's normal. That's natural and kind of wildly amazing when I think about it.
Okay, so how is knowing this side of stress going to make you healthier? Well, oxytocin doesn't only act on your brain, it also acts on your body. And one of its main roles in your body is to protect your cardiovascular system from the effects of stress. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It also helps your blood vessels stay relaxed during stress. But my favorite effect on the body is actually on the heart. Your heart has receptors for this hormone. And oxytocin helps heart cells regenerate and heal from any stress-induced damage. This stress hormone strengthens your heart. And the cool thing is that all of these physical benefits of oxytocin are enhanced by social contact and social support. So when you reach out to others under stress, either to seek support or to help someone else, you release more of this hormone, your stress response becomes healthier, and you actually recover faster from stress. I find this amazing that your stress response has a built-in mechanism for stress resilience. And that mechanism is human connection. I want to finish by telling you about one more study. And listen up, because this study could also save a life. This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States, and they ranged in age from 34 to 93. And they started the study by asking, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, how much time have you spent helping out friends, neighbors, people in your community? And then they used public records for the next 5 years to find out who died. Okay, so the bad news first. For every major stressful life experience, like financial difficulties or family crisis, that increased the risk of dying by 30%. But, and I hope you are expecting a but by now, but that wasn't true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. Caring created resilience. And so we see once again that the harmful effects of stress on your health are not inevitable. How you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask for more stressful experiences in my life, but this science has given me a whole new appreciation for stress. Stress gives us access to our hearts. The compassionate heart that finds joy and meaning in connecting with others. And yes, your pounding physical heart working so hard to give you strength and energy. And when you choose to view stress in this way, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges. And you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone. Thank you.
Woo! Woo, woo, woo. Yeah, I love that video. I watch it every 3 months. So yeah, I hope that you guys got something out of that. I hope that you enjoyed it. I think I'm stop talking. I've never made an assignment out of it or something like to force you guys to prove that you got anything out of it, but I hope that you did. I think that there was a lot of valuable stuff. The main takeaways are directly related to this class would be, I want you to lean into the stress of performing. All of that said, fear of public speaking is a real thing. So I did want to take a moment to mention, since we're at the beginning of this class, that if you are somebody who experiences like honest to God terror of public speaking, that's a real condition that actually does exist, and there's actually medicine for it. So if you are like, you know what, as I'm taking this class, I think I have more than stage fright. I think I'm honest to God, this is too much. Please talk to your doctor. And if you need help, I can tell you what you're looking for is propranolol. That's the drug. But yeah, it'll help. It's a real condition that you can get real help for. So there's actually medicine to make you a better speech giver, which is kind of wild, but there is. It helps with all of that. But most people don't need that. I'm on propranolol because I'm old enough that I get these weird shakes in my hands, and it stops those so that I'm super deadly with the pistol, but only a Nintendo one. But yeah, it's for that. But I found out when they gave it to me that they were like, oh, you'll also be even better at public speaking. You'll be more comfortable when you're on stage. And I was like, oh, I feel pretty good already, but thanks. And so yeah, but I've reflected on like, do I feel more comfortable? I guess, but I've been on this now for a decade. But yeah, you can get help. There's help if you have a problem with if it's honest to God scary. So hopefully that helps you guys and encourage you guys. Yeah. So speaking of terrifying public speaking, impromptu speeches, let's circle back to that. Those are, like I said, one of the most difficult types of speeches. It's a speech with little to no preparation, right? And that's what a job interview is. But I want to have you guys practice regular old impromptu speeches for a little bit today. So let's do that. I'm going to put you in small groups for this one. And once you're in your groups, first, just take a moment to say hi. Hello, what's your name? Who are you? What's going on with your life? Why are you here? Whatever. Take a minute to talk about that. If you like need something to talk about maybe a TV show that you are liking right now. But please waste about 5 minutes talking about nothing. And then I want you to do this activity. So the activity is going to be using your Google Dice roller that I had you open up as a tab. I want you to set that to 6, or you can grab a 6-sided die if you just have one laying around. I don't, but if you did. And then when it's your turn, you're going to get in your small groups, pick somebody randomly, and when it's your turn, you're going to roll a die and get one of these prompts. So I'm going to put them right now in the chat so we can talk about them. This is our first one of these. Main chat. Bam. So there they are. Number 1 is, my biggest concern for the future is. Number 2 is, if I ruled the world. Number 3, the absolute worst superpower would be. Number 4 is, art is important because. 5 is, the worst household chore is. And then 6 is, if I were an animal, I'd be a. So these prompts are really helpful. These are really, really easy prompts. So my hope is that you can just start talking. You can just, whatever one you roll, start saying the sentence. And when you get to the dot, 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 just keep talking. I want you to talk for about a minute to your group, maybe 2. Don't go for like more than 5, like unless you're just on a roll and your group's having a blast. But you want to make sure you have room for everybody to go. I want to do this I want you to waste 5 minutes saying hi, and then I want you to play this game. So we're going to be in small groups for about 15 minutes. That's 10 minutes to play the game. That would mean if everybody goes about a minute or 2, then everybody in the group should be able to go twice. So I want you guys just to keep going, like in your circle, until I call you back. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right. So I say 15 minutes. You never know. It should be 15 minutes, but yeah, there we go. No questions about how this is going to work? There is just give it your best shot. If you, well, I'm recreating these rooms. If you're like, man, I don't know what to say at all, you can't finish that sentence, talk about something about the sentence. Just fill the space with word salad, and that will be your stepping stone into making this work. So hopefully that works for all you guys. When I call y'all back, I'm going to ask you guys to talk about the experience. So here you go.
We kind
Right.
of got too distracted talking about wobbly cats and did not answer any of the questions.
You guys didn't get to it at all. That's
Yeah,
a
we didn't.
I answered a question, Toby answered a question, and then the timer started going down. So
Oh, I was wondering if I was calling you guys back too early. I'm about to ask everybody, like, was that enough time? So not enough for your
yeah,
team, clearly. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah,
Tina,
there's
you
Well,
showed up.
I
Was that
think we
enough
all
time?
gave a speech about what we've been doing lately, so I think that counts.
That works. Yeah, that helps. The groups that are showing up, was that enough time for you guys? Did everybody get to go?
Yes, we all got to go.
Did everybody get to go twice? Maybe not. Okay, but everybody get to go. What about another group? Leo, what you saying?
We had a great yap sesh, but never actually got to the questions.
You're the second group for that. Excellent. That's nice. That's nice. That's nice. I don't mind that at all. But I'm wondering about like how long to give for these. So it sounds like I should give you guys just a little more time just to make sure. But hey, you're getting to know each other, and that is very important, more important than this one. But we're gonna do more of these improv. Yeah, they're like improv. We're gonna do more of these in the class. So don't worry if you missed this one. There's gonna be more coming.
I think putting the onus on the introductions for 5 minutes at the beginning overwhelmed the time.
Nah, there you go. That's okay. I certainly don't mind. I want you guys to get to know each other. It'll make this whole thing way more comfy. So you guys saw those prompts, right? My biggest concern for the future is if I ruled the world, those are pretty easy to answer in my mind. When you do like impromptu speeches as a competition, which you in like colleges, in other bigger colleges, you could have gotten a scholarship for this. I did when I was in school. So at our school, we don't have competitive speech and debate, but it's a whole thing that exists. And when you do competitive speech and debate and you do impromptu speaking, you get prompts that look more like, I'm going to show you guys some. You get prompts that look more like these.
It's serious.
Boop. Well, I'm covering up half of my own screen. Poverty is a state of mind. Or what characteristics make an ideal hero and why? Who and what is an average person? Being young is overrated. So you can see these are springboards, but they're a little more tricky to answer than like in the future I'm worried about, or like if I were an animal, that would be a wonderful impromptu prompt to get. But when you do a competition, you get things like this. And then you usually have about 1 minute, maybe two, to prepare, and that is all. And you're supposed to give a speech. So what type of speech are you supposed to give? For those of you who actually got to it, I'm not sure what you guys did, but the goal of these, what is the goal of an impromptu speech? It's actually the same as the goal of a job interview question. It's to be charming and witty and to connect to the person you're talking to. That's really it. So when an impromptu prompt shows up, like if you're doing this for competition, your goal is to be charming and witty and to connect with the audience in some way. So when you have a job interviews, that's the same type of thing you're doing. And it's just as difficult, if not more. The next thing I want you guys to want to do is explore. We're going to talk about, like I've showed you guys on Tuesday, for our assignment, and next week, Thursday, we're going to be practicing the top 20 interview questions that are really common. But a lot of companies, like especially these days, big companies, like to instead ask bizarre questions that are that are weird. So I want you guys to experience some of that today, and I want to talk about it before we get into the actual questions we're going to use. So you should have downloaded a document called Interviews from Heck. That's them. So in that file, don't open it just yet. Don't worry about it just yet. But in that file, there are, I believe, like 15 different interview questions. And then following them is a paragraph that explains the thinking behind that interview question, like who did it, who asked the question, and what they were really looking for, right? So here's how I want you guys to do this assignment. In your small groups, I'm going to put you into new ones. In your small groups, take 3 minutes this time to talk to each other and waste some time and get to know each other. But please do take some time to do that. And I'll give you a little bit more time for the actual assignment. And that is to take turns reading the interview questions to each other. So like you'll just go pick it and make a circle, make a route, make however with your small group, say, hey, in our group, if it was the top row for me, it'd be like Lucas is going, then I'm going, then Toby, then Hannah, then Molly. Just agree. And then once you know, then whoever's going first reads number one. Whoever's going second reads number two, but don't peek ahead. Otherwise, this gets all messed up. You'll see it anyway because this isn't in class. If this was in class, we'd rip these up and you'd have like your own sheet and you wouldn't see each other's. There's no way I've found to give a document to you guys individually yet. So don't try not to look ahead. You might, but it won't ruin it. You're going to see that these questions are hard. They're a little difficult, and sometimes you'll be like, "What the hell were they asking?" And those are the conversations I want you to have with your small group. And then when we come back, I'm going to ask each group to share an insight you have come to from this experience, whatever that is. Could be anything. I'm not going to give you my examples, but it could be anything. So again, here's the instructions to show you what they look like. In case visually helps. These are crazy interview questions employers have actually used. Each member asks one question, rinse, repeat. Any questions? Awesome. All right. Let's put you guys back into small groups. So again, take a few minutes to waste some time and say hi, and then I will pull you guys back. You probably won't make it all the way through all 15. Feel free to skip around even if you want to in your group. But let's give you guys a good solid. I'll pull you back at 7:50. By the way, we're not taking any breaks tonight. Instead, I'm planning to end class early. So we're having a lot of these small groups. So I feel like these small groups are sort of like breaks. And I see everybody's really mad about that. So good to know. Good to know. Yay. Okay. Well, I guess we didn't have to vote. But yeah, so my plan is yeah. So there we go. Anyway, here's the rooms. So I'm going to call you guys back. This will be about 17 minutes. So I'll call you back around 7:50. Lucas is voguing. Here you guys go. Hey, Scarlett.
Hi, sorry, my computer booted me and kicked me out of Zoom, and I'm back now. But not in my group anymore.
Welcome back. Do you remember anybody's name in the group you're in?
Um,
If not, I can just put you in a random one, but
I think Hannah was in it. Wait, hold on. Is that someone in the class? I'm really sorry. I'm so bad with names.
so am I. So no
Oh
pressure.
my
I'll just throw you into one of these rooms.
God.
Hannah,
Okay,
her
sorry.
room has 4 people, so
No, oh, then that's wrong. Then I'm
that's
wrong.
probably it. I'll put you in room 4. Here you go.
Okay,
Have fun.
thank you.
Hey, yeah. Something about it. Oh, fuck, group got me.
Come in here, I'm teaching.
I didn't want to surprise you.
Oh, hey.
My little one thought it was a great idea to play with the modem and unplug the internet, so I got kicked out of my group.
Oh, no. Okay.
I
Which
got it
group?
connected. I think I was in 3.
3. Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, little bud. Come here. Oh, my. Yeah. Hello. 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 You were doing that, buddy. We got 5 minutes still. Still have 5 minutes. Down.
Yeah, it's so cool. I can't wait for somebody else. I'm excited for Jeff City. This kid, like, legit. What's that? Me earlier that you do that would create some. But that was wide open. That's fun. You're beautiful. Gotcha. I'm not gonna let you die, girl.
Welcome back.
Oh.
About 20 seconds till everybody else is pulled back. And here's everybody. Sweet. Welcome back, everybody. Hey, as you're trickling in. Sorry to aggressively pull you guys back like that. Welcome back. So hopefully you guys got through a good number of those. I am curious. Did anybody get through all of them? Or did anybody do number 15? You did. Did you guys just jump to 15 or did you go all the way through them?
We just chose one.
Just choose one? Okay. Well, let's do then, let's talk about these because like I think number 15 is a good one to talk about together. Just one group did it, we'll all do it together, but let's have the conversation because I thought maybe nobody get there. But these were tough, right? These were weird. Hopefully you were like, especially when you do the very first one and what is the very first one? It's Amazon. Like you're like, oh, these companies must just be terrible, weird companies that, don't know. It's the big ones. It's big companies that like to do this. Why? Why these type of questions? What's going on, right? What's happening? Well, part of the problem is nobody knows what they're doing when they're interviewing you. It's just how it is. It's kind of the truth. I talked to my boss here at Lake Washington about this because she interviewed me, but she also has interviewed, she's been at this job for a long time and she's interviewed a ton of people. And we had a fun conversation where she just said, and now that she's a dean, and she's like, now that I have interviewed and hired probably over 100 people, I am very aware that I don't know how to do this well. And everybody at the school in her position agrees. It's like this because once you've hired enough people who do a great interview, but then turn out to be terrible employees, you start to wonder, like, wow, what's the best way to do this? So some companies go this route. They ask these type of crazy questions to try and be interesting, but also to try and get a response that you couldn't have prepared for, right? So like that first one, how would you solve problems if you were from Mars? They just want to hear you answer a question outside the box. The last question was, how many square feet of pizza are eaten in America in a day? I think is what it is. Scroll, scroll, scroll. How many square feet of pizza, yep, are eaten in the US each year? And this one is Goldman Sachs is like asking for this. So it's a big company and they just want you to not freak out and to give some type of answer. They just want to know that you have problem solving skills. So these type of questions, there's no way to prepare for. The only way to prepare for this type of interview question is to get a lot of rest before you show up at your interview and just and be ready for anything. So now that you know that some of these companies, especially big ones like Amazon, might ask you crazy questions, when you go into your interviews, you might get this, right? But we can't prepare for these. But what we can prepare for are what are called procedural interview questions. Now, those are questions when that are much more common. Those are when people ask you things like, what would you do in a certain situation? Or what have you done in certain situations? Those questions are super, super common. They're becoming more popular because they're difficult to answer. They're very difficult to like just make. They hope they're difficult to lie to. But the real trick, what they're actually looking for, and what makes them a good question and a good answer, is if you answer with a story. That's really what they're looking for. When they ask you, "Hey, what would you do if you showed up to work and all of your employees were gone, but and you're the manager?" You could say all you want. Well, I think I would do this, that, and the other thing, but that isn't an A plus answer. That's a fine answer, but the person who gets the job, according to a lot of research that I have put into this, the person who gets the job is the person who tells a story from their past that links to the question. Because that they believe, the interviewers will believe, right? If you just say, I would call up people and like you just problem solve the situation, that's good. But what they really want is to hear a story of something you've done in the past that's related. That's how you get an A plus. And I can talk about this directly with Amazon. I have my ex, not my current partner, but my ex worked there, and he was the only person in his department going up for and they needed to promote somebody. And he went in and interviewed, and they literally told him to his face, you didn't tell enough stories. You need to have a journal where you write down stories and have stories ready to go. Stories are key. They really are. They're key to job interviews. Now, there are two ways to approach telling stories in job interviews. And I'm going to share both of them with you. And you can pick whichever one works for you. So one method is called STAR. Has anybody ever heard of the STAR method? Okay, no problem. I cannot present this without it being obvious in my voice because you can't not communicate things that I don't like this method. So I'm going to present it to you. It might work for you. It doesn't work for me. And so I'm like, ugh. But I have ADHD and I'm neuroatypical and I'm not you. So maybe this will work for you. I don't know. So I want to make sure I present it. So in order to do that, we're going to watch somebody else talk about it because they'll give it a fair shake. But the STAR, what it stands for, oh no, I hit the wrong button. What it stands for is situation, where was that? Situation, task, something, something, action, result. So that's what it stands for. I'll show it to you so you can see the visual. So what this is, this acronym is to help you understand a general format or structure you can use to answer interview questions. And in theory, you could answer any question using this framework. So you get asked a question and you think of a related situation that you've been in and a task that you accomplished and the action that happened and the result that came about. That's sort of what it does. But like I said, I'm not the best salesperson for this. So we're going to listen to somebody else. This guy ironically works for Amazon. I find that ironic because of what we just watched and what we just read. So it's like, huh, okay. I personally, by the way, and this also will come across really clearly, I hate Amazon. So there's like, we're watching this and this is how to get a job there. If you want one, go for it. There's a lot of money to be had. Everybody I know who's worked there has been eaten up and spit out. So there we are. Margaret, did you have something to say? Did you have a thought? I saw your hand up. Nope, you're just waving. Okay, nice. Let's
I was
get...
just saying, like, here.
Oh,
Yeah.
here. Yeah. I thought maybe you had a story like, yeah, happened to me. I was gonna be like, oh, geez, tell us all about it, please. Because, yeah. But here we go. Let's learn about the STAR method from Amazon.
Hi, I'm Cody. and I'm a senior manager of talent acquisition at Amazon. I've had the privilege of interviewing Amazon candidates for nearly 9 years, and today, I'd like to share some of my best tips to help you ace your Amazon interview. In many interviews outside of Amazon, candidates are asked hypothetical questions. For example, how would you deal with a difficult customer or stakeholder? Or what would you do if you're faced with adversity or a business challenge? These types of questions are hypothetical and ask how you might act in the future. At Amazon, we like to rely on data and facts. To attain that data, we ask behavioral questions. These questions instead ask what you've already achieved or learned. We ask candidates to share some specific examples of when they've demonstrated behaviors or skills. For example, tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult customer or stakeholder, or share an example of a time when you faced adversity or overcame a business challenge. So, knowing this, what do we recommend to be the best way to answer a behavioral question? The STAR method. What is STAR? The STAR method is a framework to structure answers for behavioral interview questions. STAR is an acronym that stands for situation, task, actions, and results. Now to break that down, situation. Explain the situation to the interviewer so they understand the context of your example. Task. Talk about the challenge or goal of what you're trying to achieve. Action. Describe the steps that you took to reach your goal. Result. Explain the outcomes of what you did. You can even explain what you learned from that experience. At Amazon, we value straightforward and clear communication. STAR is a method to help provide a framework for clear answers. It's not something to memorize, but rather a tool to clearly communicate your strengths and experiences. Some candidates even use STAR terminology as they provide an answer. Now, here's how you could use STAR. Let's pretend you're asked the question, please provide an example of a time you exceeded customer expectations. Here's how I might respond using STAR method. Now, let's begin with the situation. In 2020, I was a customer success manager at my previous company. In this role, I was in charge of delivering a software implementation to a $2 billion company of around 5,000 employees that operated in 36 countries. Now let's pause there. The specific and publicly available data helps set the context for my example. Task. The challenge and task ahead of that year was to successfully implement, onboard, and train the users in all 36 countries. Success would be measured in a monthly satisfaction survey, as well as a joint report to their executive leadership board once a quarter. Now let's pause there. These data points give the interviewer a better picture of the context, risks, and visibility into my example. Now, action. This was not my first implementation, but the first at this scale. Knowing that, I formulated a plan to take 3 actions. First, I created a customer feedback mechanism on a weekly basis. Now, this was above and beyond because in the past, this was collected quarterly. I also had the survey translated to 10 different languages covering all 36 countries. Second, I wanted to make sure our users knew the why behind this change, and I took the action of creating a monthly office hours and 12 continued education sessions on the product. In fact, these sessions are now being used as standard practice for all future implementations, which there have been 3 of this size so far. And third, a byproduct of the customer feedback actually revealed insights to other opportunities in their organization. I delivered these insights to the executive board in a thorough report, and they were delighted to hear the strengths and opportunities of their organization. Let's pause there. Notice I broke down my plan into 3 main actions, and notice that I'm using I statements for the actions that I owned. Okay, now the result. As a result, the implementation was delivered with a customer feedback score of 9.5 out of 10, and that's the highest our company has ever seen. The Insights report opened another avenue of business with the customer that doubled our revenue. Let's pause there. Here and throughout this example, notice how I'm using quantifiable data to show the scale of my impact. Hopefully that example gave you a good idea of how to structure answers using STAR. There's no right or wrong way to use STAR, but here's some tips. It can be tempting to jump into hypothetical scenarios. Focus on actual behaviors and outcomes. If it didn't go as expected, share the why or learning behind it. Pause and ask for feedback. Would you like to learn more details about this? Or does this give you a clear picture of the situation, task, action, or result? We value quantifiable data at Amazon. Share your examples with numbers, timelines, and quantifiable results where possible. Some folks bring notes to supplement their examples. I don't think I've seen a job description that has perfect memorization as a requirement for any role here. Remember, the goal of the interview is to communicate clearly with your data. STAR is one tool to achieving that. Thank you for watching. To learn more about how to prepare for your Amazon interview, check out Interviewing at Amazon Prep Guide, linked below.
Stop talking. Okay, so that's the STAR method. Hopefully that made sense to you guys. If it works for you, then use it. Use it next week when we do our interviews. If that works for you, then it's a really good method where you can answer literally anything. If you're like me, however, remembering the STAR acronym will make you forget literally everything else. And so, catch-22 there. So for me, I like to do something completely different. And what I want to do is I use what's called a story toolbox. So I had you guys download the document, My Story Toolbox, and that is the method I like to use. So I'm going to go ahead and explore that with you guys. Let me go grab. Where is that? Ooh, here we go. Just a second. So it's in this week's module under files and stuff for the class, and it looks like this. Let's zoom in for you guys. It looks like this. So it has 4 spots for stories, and there's spots for 2 stories per spot. And there's a cat down here. He's super cute. So here's basically the idea. The concept is when you get asked these type of, stop sharing, when you ask these type of behavioral questions or interview questions of any kind, right? You may be asked behavioral questions. You may not. The 20 questions, some are behavioral, some aren't. And that's because you don't know what's going to happen in the job interview you actually get. And I want this experience to help prepare you as much as possible for the chaos and unpredictability of that event so that you can practice it in class and have this experience in your pocket when you actually have a real job interview so that when it matters, you have at least some experience preparing for all these types of questions and having them knowing that they could come, right? That you're not sure. Your questions could be procedural, they could be batshit crazy, or they could be literally normal everyday interview questions like, tell me about a weakness of yours, tell me about a strength of yours. Those are also questions that interviewers still use. So in the 20 questions that we're going to use next week, it's a mix. It's a mix of procedural questions and non-procedural questions, like action questions. Tell me about like your greatest weakness. Tell me about a pet peeve of yours, things like that. Both of those procedural questions and those type of personality questions could be answered still with stories. And stories are still the best way to go. So next week, when you get asked your questions, answer them however you want. But I want us to prepare with a story toolbox in mind, just in case this is what you want to use. So going back and looking at the story toolbox, there are 4 categories. Let's look at them. So the first one is a time when you worked with a difficult person and how you handled it. And the second one is a time you messed up or failed, right? So those are 2 negatives. And then the third one is a time you saved the day or solved a big problem. And the fourth is a time you are proud of. You achieved something great. So for this toolbox, for each of these lines, you don't need to write out the entire story. You just need to write out enough of a prompt that will remind you of the story. Does that make sense? Because this is for you. This is your story toolbox. When it's filled out with all of your little story prompts, the idea of what you're going to do with this story toolbox is you would print it out or fill it out on paper originally, however you want to do it, and you would have it in front of you when you interview. So if you're interviewing from home like this is the perfect situation because you can just have that thing anywhere. When I interviewed for literally this job, I had my story toolbox taped to my monitor next to my camera so I could just look at it without anybody thinking I'm looking away. And I used all of it because I know what I'm doing. I know that stories are what's going to convince people. Stories are what's going to connect with people. The reason there are 2 for each is because you're going to use them up, right? As you're telling, as you get asked questions. These stories are broad. They can be broadly applied. So let's look at the first one again. a time where you worked with a difficult person and how you handled it. Whatever stories you have there, those could be used to answer a whole host of questions about times anytime that you've had difficulty at work. You want to have those stories ready because if you don't, and you instead just try and come up with something right then in the moment, you run the very real risk of telling the truth. Let me let that sink in. You run the real risk of telling the truth. Now, why would I say that? Am I encouraging you to lie during your job interviews? No. But I am encouraging you to craft the truth you want your listeners to hear. That's what politicians do, right? So still tell the truth. But when you get asked this question, hey, tell me about a time you worked with a difficult person and how you handled it. If you don't have a story ready, there's an excellent chance you'll say, oh my God, I had to work with this bitch and she was terrible and I punched her. No, that's not going to get you a job. That's not the right answer. Even if that's true. No, if that's true, you especially don't tell that story. No. Or you tell that story and you spin it. You say, you don't call her a bitch. You say, I worked with whoever. What no name to Susan. I'm going to use Susan. You just say, yeah, no, I worked with this person named Susan, and we had a hard time and things went badly. But I figured it out, and now I made the company money. Now we're friends. Now we can get along. I solved the problem. It ends positively. If you don't have your story toolbox ready to go, there's just a good chance you'll say the truth. And most of us have gone through some really bad things. That's the interview questions are traps, right? They're inviting you to say something negative. If you say something negative, they'll go, and mark you right off their list, right? Because they're looking for people who are good to work with. They don't actually care about your answer specifically. They care about what you reveal with your answer. And are you charming? Are you likable? Do you look like somebody they want to have around? And then does your answer work, right? So in this one, tell me a time when you worked with a difficult person, how you handled it. If I were asked this question, I would jump right into talking about my coworker, Kelly. I'd say the name because that makes the story stand out and seem more true, which it is true, right? And I would say, oh my God, yeah. So I worked with this other professor named Kelly and we were co-teachers. We had to teach the same class together, but we were like oil and water. She had a completely different way of handling the class than I did. I would call her a more type A personality, and I'd be more of a type B, which meant conflict happened right away as far as team teaching a class. However, after a few weeks of working with her, I realized that her approach to teaching was something that I kind of needed, actually. I needed a little bit more structure in my teaching. So in working with her and finally finding common ground, our class ended up being one of the best classes I ever taught. Great answer, right? Really great answer. Do you know that I still hate her? Nope. Do you know that I have told my boss I will never work with her again? Nope. Do you know any? You don't know any of that. You don't need to know that. I'm not telling you the full truth because that's not getting us a job. Getting us a job is telling the truth that we want to share, right? You don't lie. All of that is true, but you spin it. We've all seen politicians do this over and over and over again. They've asked a question, hey, what would you do to bring peace to the Middle East? And their answer is somehow not about the Middle East or peace or anything. They're talking about what they want to talk about. That's what you do in your job interview. You talk about what you want to talk about. And if you have a story ready to go, a story that makes you look good, that you've pre-thought about how to spin it and make it sound good, then you'll sound awesome and you'll get the job. Does that make sense? And the reason there's two spots is because you'll want to use these stories as fast as you can, but there's an excellent chance that you'll get asked the same question phrased slightly differently. Like you get asked this question, tell us about a time you worked with a difficult person and how you handled it. And then the very next question could be, tell us about a time you disagreed with somebody at work. I just told you my story about disagreeing with somebody at work. I just told you about Kelly. That was my I get the job story. I had that one prepared. That's why you have two ready to go, right? So then I'm like, oh, okay, well, now I got to talk about Paul. Oh, Paul. Yeah. And then I tell that story. So, but you want to have it preset so you don't end up talking about the time you got fired. You don't want to talk about the time you disagreed with your boss because they're an idiot. You don't want to talk about anything like that. You want to talk about the time something negative happened, like they're asking for, but how it turned out great because you are so hireable. Look at you. So the second question was a time you messed up or failed, right? You never want to say something like, oh, I've never messed up. That's not the answer. It's same as like when you get asked, hey, Sheriff, what's your greatest weakness? Do not say, I don't have any. That's a terrible answer. And also, and I know this from personal experience, don't share a strength as a weakness, thinking they're so stupid they won't notice. I did that when I got right out of college. I had one of my first job interviews, and this guy asked me literally that question: "Share us what are your greatest weaknesses?" And I was like, "Oh, I work too hard and I care too much." I literally tried that. And he at the end of the interview said, "Yeah, that answer is terrible, and you're never going to get a job with that." And I was like, "Oh, well, I just got a bachelor's degree. This is Medford, Oregon. What's happening? I should be able to get any job I want." Yeah, no. I was told to my face, that's a stupid answer. And I was like, God, I'm going to remember this forever. So I'm passing that on to you, right? They do want to have a real answer. So you get asked this question, a time you messed up or failed, you're going to need to share about a time you messed up or failed. But you don't want to stop there. You need to talk about how you learned from it, how you grew, how you fixed it in the end, how it turned out awesome. You don't just say, yeah, it was one time I accidentally got everybody fired and the company is destroyed now and doesn't exist. Does that answer your question? No, you don't do that. No. You say, yeah, I got the company totally destroyed, but the good news is it turned out the boss was a pedophile. This is going wrong. Nope, that's a bad answer. Nope, too negative. So you got to figure it out. You got to figure out how to spin the story so that you're not making them think about horrible things, but it still ends well. So that's another one. You don't want to have that not prepared, right? Right. For some of these questions, you might be sitting here thinking, well, actually, I'll get to this in a minute. Let me do the positives, and then I'll show you this other bit. So the other questions, the third one is a time when you saved the day or solved a big problem. A lot of students have a hard time bragging. So I want you to think that through, right? When did you save the day? Maybe you're like, I never saved the day. I've never solved a problem. Go beyond work, right? Expand your search for stories beyond jobs and think about school. Have you ever saved the day? Were you ever the person who in school, when a group project was assigned, you did all the work? You got everybody else A's, but you really saved it. Probably all of you, because you're the ones who are in college now. Those other assholes didn't go to college. They went off to get jobs at wherever. You're the ones who are probably, a lot of you are the people who worked the hardest to get here. Brag about that, right? When you get one of these questions asking about positives, you don't have to hold back. That they don't want you to, but you might feel weird about it. So that's why we're practicing, right? That's why I want you to have the story toolbox ready to go. So a time when you saved the day, solved a big problem, that could be in school, that could be at work, that could even be among your family and friends, right? That could be, yeah, we were on a road trip with my family and we blew a tire and I'm the only one in the car who knew how to change a tire. That's a good answer. That's still a good answer. You told a story. The story, once you start telling the story, there's magic that happens, which we're going to read an article about in 2 weeks. But there's brain chemistry that happens once you start a story. People listen. People just listen more. We just do that. I don't know why. We seem to be wired this way. So start telling that story and you'll connect more with the people. The last question was a time you're proud of, you achieved something great. For a lot of students, this is the hardest question because I'm asking you to really brag, right? What did you achieve that's great? What's something that you're proud of? And if you are sitting here thinking, I haven't done anything I'm proud of, let me remind y'all that we just had a global pandemic and you somehow made it through that. So brag about that. Did you thrive through that? Did you like finish school during a pandemic? That's something you did, right? And then talk it up because that's one that's really good to connect with an audience about because we all went through the same pandemic. We all have trauma. So if you talk about that, your listeners aren't going to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. No, they'll totally get it. If you're like, well, when the pandemic hit in 2020, I was in high school, or when the pandemic in 2020, for me, it was my mom was in a retirement facility that got locked down and I didn't see her for 2 years. And so by the time I got to see her again, she couldn't walk. So my job was to get her out and about and to kind of rehabilitate my mom. That's something I'm extremely proud of that I managed to do with her. And one of my proudest moments was taking her to Walmart and buying her cigarettes and watching her smoke them standing in front of Walmart. There's a little walker and I'm like, you're standing. Yeah. That has nothing to do with a job, but hearing that story, don't you want to give me a job? Don't you want to work with me? That's the kind of stories you want to tell. So be thinking broadly, right? Be thinking very broadly for these. So that's your story toolbox. Any questions about that? How that's going to work? I want you to have that thing filled out by not Monday, Tuesday, by Tuesday, but it's due as part of your homework due Sunday. So heads up. But remember, you just need to write, it doesn't even have to be a full sentence, but something in each line that's enough to trigger your memory. It might be a full sentence. It might be a whole paragraph that you write in there, but it also might just be, you know, the time I fixed the copier right before reports were due, you know, and then you'll know, oh, that time when that crazy thing happened, or I don't know what's going to be. But just that's all I'm really expect. And for turning this in, you can either type it up and submit it as, or you can just even take a picture if you filled it out on paper. So whatever works for you. Any questions about the story toolbox? Leanne.
Yes, please. I have some questions. So each like a question, we have different story. It's okay, or we have to have one story and spread out in different question. Because like the a time proud yourself or you save the day is I have different stories, so I have to write down.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it,
two of them. Yeah, exactly. Did I answer your
and
question?
mm,
Tell
my
me, tell me your question one more time.
so my question is like we have four question in the story toolbox, right?
Yes.
And each question, because from the question number one, I'm thinking about my work. But
Mhm.
question number two, I'm thinking my school. So I
Mhm.
have to combine with them, or I have to think about only working with the question number one, number two, number three,
Mhm.
and number four.
I
That's
see. Yeah, school answers can work. You can talk about school in a job interview. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to talk about, to use as answers. Employers actually expect that to some degree, especially when you're interviewing, like for whatever you guys are studying, you know, like if you're studying welding and you're getting welding questions, they want to hear about school. So you can use school or you can use work. Both are fine. But yeah, but you have spots for two stories for each one. So you could do one story from work, one from school if you wanted, or you can mix them however you'd like. There's the point is to have two negative, or really four negative stories ready to go that you've already pre-thought of and spun to sound good, and four positive stories ready to go that you've already thought through, that you have, and then you want to, when you're being asked, we'll talk about this on Tuesday, but when you get the interview questions, then you want to spin your story to match, and then share them. That's the best way to use a story toolbox. Again, this isn't the only way to do it. You can also use the STAR method. So yeah, whatever works for you guys. Any other questions, guys? Yeah, Lauren.
I want your opinion on something because there's different schools of thought about this. When you brought up the idea about, taking these stories and making them more personal, you can go outside of work. When you're going and talking to an employer, it's with the idea that there's a lot going on, like you said, not all what's being communicated. When you
Mhm.
tell stories, and let's say it's about your kids, or you tell this story and you're spinning it, and it's about something that has to do with your health. Do you think that those stories can reflect negatively in your interview because the interviewer is listening to this person is not going to show up to work because they've got health
Mhm.
issues, or this person's not showing up because they've got kids to take care of, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely. They absolutely can. That's why being really thoughtful about what you share is so important. And think about, like, for everybody, think about what Lauren just, but right, because if your stories, your interviewers are looking for reasons to cross you off the list. They're just
Mhm.
listening for those reasons. So if you have a story where, like Lauren's examples, those were good examples. Like if you're sharing a story and you're like, oh, this is a good story about my children, make sure that you are sharing it in a way where you aren't presenting them a really good reason, like, oh, wait, your kids take up all your time, or like, hey, this one thing I'm proud of is that I took care of my sick mom who takes up all of my free time and lives in a different state. That's not exactly right. That kind of says to them, hey, you might be leaving soon. Hey, you might be not invested here at all. So you do want to be exactly thinking about how is this going to come across? And then putting yourself into the listener's shoes as much as possible and thinking, how could this sound bad? How could you take this wrong? Could this get me excluded from this job? Um, People say, well, but next week when we do our interviews, a lot of you guys will probably answer And then afterwards, when we talk about it, you'll be like, I can't believe I said that. Like it was such a negative. It was like I'll ask a question, you'd be like, oh, I hated that person. You're like, and you're internally going, why am I saying this? Which is part of why we practice this. That's part of why it's in this class is I want to get those experiences out here in our classroom. But we'll talk about those. So if next week, when you're sharing your answers, if you notice, especially if you notice that you share stories that you like and are you're thinking, I think this would actually get me not the job, then you are somebody who needs to very much, I think, use a story toolbox that you have highly thought about those answers and made sure that they are really good, right? Make sure that they don't, like my answer about my coworker, Kelly, I left out so many details because I want to get the job. That was actually a story I told. Two people who knew the Kelly I'm talking about when I got this job. They all knew who I'm talking about. And so I made sure to spin that thing about, I left out most of my relationship with that person. The crazy thing is that like my relationship with this person has been all over the place because we work together, right? So like today, I actually kind of get along with her. But but I'm gonna craft my answers to make it sound like I learned a ton and there's no problem now. And I'm the type of person who does this all the time. But am I? Of course I'm not. I'm a normal everyday guy who has problems with everybody. But you don't want to tell them that, right? So part of getting a job is this smoke. I feel like I'm always telling you guys like I'm telling you to lie, but I'm not, from my perspective, telling you to lie. But if you have a really strict perspective of truth, then I am. But I am telling you to be creative with your truth. For some of you, that might sound horrible. You'll be like, "Oh my God, is this the only way to get a job?" Yeah, maybe. I think that you at least need to learn to not share. If you're the type of person who needs to tell the truth, great. Then you need to learn how to not talk in a job interview, and you need to learn how to edit what you say. And if that feels like lying, then this whole game of getting a job is going to be pretty tough. I'm sorry. But good news is you're in a trade school. So hopefully, whatever you're going for, you can still get. Because most of you guys will get jobs. This school's all about jobs. So I have a lot of confidence. But yeah, this is a weird thing to talk about, isn't it? Like, hey, let's all learn how to how to lie and like massage the truth. But if you keep it going, this is like I mentioned earlier, this is exactly what politicians do to the nth degree, and it makes me crazy. I have a hard time watching anybody lately answer questions in interviews because interviewers don't say, that was not my question. Can you please actually answer my question? Nobody does that. Everybody just goes, cool. I asked about cheese and we're talking about basketball. I don't know. Sure. Let's go on to the next question. Like that was normal. You can do a little bit of that in job interviews. A little bit. You can. What they're looking for isn't exactly the answer. So yeah, this is a good conversation. Anybody else have any thoughts or anything to share about this? Especially if you've been through the interview process yourself and have any gems of wisdom or anything. Just want to know before we move on. It's crazy stuff. Have I asked how many of you have had job interviews? How many of you have experienced them? Yeah. Sorry, guys. Ooh. Andrew, has your hand up? Did you raise your hand like just for my question?
Bit of both. Having been on both sides of the interview experience, I was on a hiring committee panel for a position. The people that we ended up offering to it turned down for reasons I don't know. But definitely, definitely the concrete examples helps because we've asked questions. They talked about this little bit, but they didn't fully explain. Especially, I work at the Rise Center at OW Tech, so resources for inclusion, support, and empowerment, DEI, and stuff like that is what it is. So like, one of the questions was, like, how do you support diverse groups or something? And we had one candidate where it's like, we don't do that here. It's like, what? I don't understand. It's like you. It's like they were at the college. They said they do like they did like similar stuff or something. But it's like we don't do like DEI or whatever the equivalent was here. It's like I don't understand. You're you're a college, you support students, and yet you have no examples for that. It's like I don't. So yeah, if you don't have examples, don't lie, but find something to say. Just
Yeah,
be honest and say, I don't have any experience in this. That may suck, but it's better than saying something that you don't mean.
that's a
Yeah.
really good point. And I want to piggyback on that. I want to add to that. That's really, really good. If you ever get a question and you just literally don't have an answer, don't just make word salad up. That does sound terrible, right? And it's perfectly reasonable if you get asked a question that it's fine to say like, oh, I don't actually have an answer to that, as long as you don't do it too much. For next Thursday when we have our questions, you will have the ability to say, can I have another question? And I will give you another question because it's for practice. So if you get one weird, but that's an excellent point. Just making stuff up just to try and fill the space. We know that's happening, right? You can tell when people are doing that. Your interviewers can tell when that's happening, and that's not a good look. So thank you for sharing that, Andrew. Yep. Do you have more? Yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it briefly in terms of the tone for the stories, but
Mm.
be sure to actually add inflection because I think there was another candidate where they didn't sound energetic enough, and that was definitely a sore point where we were like, and also make sure you have a valid reason for the job. We had another candidate where I was like, I have a spouse that's near here. It's like that's not enough of a reason.
Mm,
It's like,
mm,
you want to be here just to be next to your spouse. That's not okay, fine. But also, if you're not invested in the job, why
right.
did you apply? So,
Right.
yeah,
That's kind of like that question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You,
yeah,
you always say at that company you're interviewing at. You never say the truth. You never say, oh, this is a stepping stone, and I'm planning on getting out of here as soon as I got my experience. You say, oh, I hope to have your job someday. Whatever. You want to work there. And this is good. This is good stuff. And don't ask for the salary on your first interview either. Those are just dumb things you're not supposed to do that can make you look bad. This is good advice. Excellent. All right. So let's wrap up class. So here is just my basic interviewing advice. Use your story toolbox. See if you have anything that you can work for questions, right? Maybe use the STAR method. That's also a fine method to go about. The main thing is staying positive, right? These questions are opportunities to go negative, some of them, but you want to spin it positive. You don't want to ever sound bored or upset about a past job. You don't want to bring any baggage to the job interview. You just want to stay positive. Yep, you're super happy to be there. You want this job. And then I say, feel free to review the questions and tips or not. So the questions and tips are, I had you download interview. Stop sharing there. I had you download a file called impromptu tips. So that's for you to go ahead and look at on your own time if you want to. It's up to you. You don't have to. But also you can pre-look at the 20 questions if you feel like it, or if you don't. That's also okay. But I do want to end with having you guys, going to put you guys back into small groups to discuss your elevator pitch. So we talked about those on Tuesday. We had some time in class to work on them. How many of you guys have something written? Not everybody, though. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to put you guys into small groups. And if you have your elevator pitch, this is the time to practice it. So I want you to share it with your small group, read it, see what they say, give each other feedback on how it's going, what you think, if they could add something to it. If anyone in your group doesn't have theirs done, that's okay. But if you don't have yours done, I want you to explain what you think you would put into your elevator pitch and then have your group help you out. So we're crowdfunding these. So I want you guys to help each other make them perfect. There's no reason you're not competing with each other in this at all. So I just want them all to be awesome and to have you guys work together. Once you're done with these and you feel like you're happy with your elevator pitch, you can, if you want to, go review the 20 questions together and hang out in class as late as you want, or you can be done. I'm taking a wild guess. I'll see most of you guys vanishing. But if you want to hang out as late as you want. But you are done from the small groups. So when you're done with the small group, you're done with class. And I'll be here if you have any questions. Sound good?
Question, sir.
Yes.
I wanted to ask a question. I am an event planner.
Mm.
So my job constantly involves the aspect of pitching because would that be something that I can continue to work with, or do I just have to work on different type of?
No. This is a wonderful question. I'm so glad you asked. Thank you.
Okay.
Create the pitch that is useful for you in real life. Yeah, that's the one I would rather you share, not a made up one for my assignment. So create something that you actually want to share. So this is in the assignment. I mentioned this, but I didn't say it in class. I've had students in the past be like exactly point out like Rosie just did and say, hey, in my world, like for example, the one example I was thinking of is I had a student who was a music producer. He was a very young music producer. And he was like, in my world, I am pitching songs and artists to people all the time. Could I practice that? And I was like, sounds great. As long as that's great. If this is going to be a practical, helpful thing for you in your life, use it. And you know the job that you're going for. So if this elevator pitch doesn't exactly match the job you're going for, like if you're not ever gonna, if you're like, I'm never gonna actually use this, but I'm gonna use something close to it, I would much rather you practice the actual thing you would use for your elevator pitch next week. So Rosie, perfect example. Please give us a pitch for whatever you're actually going to do. And for anybody else, if you're like, yeah, I need to learn how to pitch myself to, I don't know. I don't know your future, but we are all out there hustling all the time, it feels like. And this elevator pitch is part of that. And it's a good practice. So any other questions? That was a good one. Thank you for asking that because I meant to say that and I forgot. So any other questions, guys? Alrighty. So here are your groups. Oh, by the way, I have not seen it myself, but in the chat, there's a link to a Monty Python skit, apparently, about political interviews that I'm excited to watch after class. Yeah, if it's awesome, I'm gonna be adding it to my PowerPoint for the future because that sounds like it could be really funny. Anyway, check that out.
It's not actually Monty Python, but it is really funny.
Who is it?
I don't know. I've only seen them in this particular clip.
I'm like even
It's
more
a British comedy thing, so it's it's gonna be funny, nice dry humor.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm gonna check that out. Here are your small groups. Have fun, and if I don't see you past this, I'll see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah.
I have to get going. I'm kind of on a time crunch, but I did get my thing done, so just letting you know.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
You too. Did she ruin a room? Nope. Everything's great. All right, I'm gonna stop this recording now. If you've been watching this, thanks for watching it.